Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of the NH Experience. And on today's show, I have a very, very special guest. This gentleman is a criminal defense attorney as well as a civil rights attorney. He was born and raised in Oakland. He's a Cal Berkeley graduate. He's all been on the front line of the movement when it comes to civil rights, when it comes to systemic and institutionalized racism and oppression against people. Also, make sure that he's against police brutality against people as represented several folks, including the late, great Oscar Grant in that case, and we'll get into that, and his film endeavors. As you saw earlier, very impactful, powerful film that it was his story. So we're going to get into that more. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the one and only Adante Pointer. What's going on, sir? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing beautiful, brother. Doing beautiful, brother. Just caught up in the struggle like everyone else.
I can dig it, man. We are getting through it the best way we know how, man. So first and foremost, I want to talk to you a bit about yourself and at what point, obviously growing up in Oakland, California, we all know the Bay Area is a radical place, always been about going against the grain, anti-establishment, as it were, from just decades of history that we've seen, home of the Black Panther Party for self-defense, a lot of other social groups that were fighting against systemic and institutionalized racism and oppression. What was it like for you growing up in Oakland, and at what point did you decide that you wanted to be an attorney rather for the people?
Right. Well, growing up in Oakland is a very multicultural city with a very long and very legendary history, if you will, about Black folks and everyone coming together as allies to support our struggle. So growing up in West Oakland in particular, which is home of the Black Panthers and CL Dellums and people like that, Sleeping Porters, people who have struggled on behalf of Black community. So, you grow up with that history all around you, with the artwork, the graffiti, the all of that rich history around you. So you're aware and you're conscious and you woke. And so it forced me, if you will, to think about where I fit into that long history and tradition. And so in thinking about that and growing up, I had the benefit of being able to go to schools across town in some of the more rich and elite kind of neighborhoods. But when I returned home every night, I saw my neighborhood was much different, and so it made me wonder, well, how can we have two societies that are living side by side? One where everything looked like everything was abundant and clean and, just all the way built up, big houses and mansions and circular driveways. And then when I come home, it's a much different situation. People are out of work, they're unemployed, people hanging around, we dilapidated housing. Mm-hmm. And so I try to figure out where I fit in that. And that's where it led me to think politics and then ultimately the law. So that led me to where I'm at here today.
When you talk about the law, growing up in Oakland, obviously we know about the incidents with the Oakland Police Department. Obviously, the late, great Tupac Shakur exemplified that as far as what happened to him for simply just jaywalking. I'm sure there's countless other stories that did not get publicized that they were doing. Talk a little bit about growing up in Oakland, dealing with that police department.
Whew. The Oakland Police Department is notorious, simply put, and not notorious B.I.G. I mean, notorious in the most negative of ways. I grew up in West Oakland where there was a group of police officers called the Riders, and they were beating, torturing, framing, and planting evidence on people, fabricating cases, arresting people, sending them away for a lot of jail time. And they were doing this essentially with impunity. They were just doing it with no consequences. And, they were so notorious that they finally were brought up on criminal charges, and the ringleader fled to Mexico, never to be seen from or heard from again. And so seeing that, growing up in that environment, and then myself, imagine when I was studying for my bar exam, I happened to have my door open. I lived next to a vacant lot, and I heard a whole bunch of tussling going on outside the door. And when I went to the door, I looked out, I saw two Oakland police officers beating up a guy right in front of me. And I called out, and this is back in the days of the cell phones were just kind of coming out with the video cameras. So I was trying to capture it, but me inserting myself into the situation and letting the officers know that they were being looked at caused them to stop. And then that person wound up coming back to me like 2-3 weeks later and was trying to look for witnesses, looking for me. And of course, he was very happy to find out that his witness happened to be somebody who was actually on his way to being an attorney. And so that was my first kind of like introduction in a formal way into dealing with the law and civil rights. But, you know, in and of myself growing up, and as most, especially Black men and Black people, you know, you get introduced to the law and the legal system typically by way of driving your car. And so, you know, growing up in the Bay Area, I've been stopped, pulled over, harassed, and all those different things. And, you know, even up to this day, you know, it really hasn't stopped.
No, it hasn't. That's the unfortunate part. I mean, when you talk about you were part of a really major case, and the young man that lost his life that was savagely murdered by a BART police officer, and Oscar Grant. And we saw how that unfolded. Talk a little bit about that case and what brought you into that case, and then ultimately how did you see that case going before the verdicts were read? Because obviously the BART officer got off easy, as I like to call it.
Absolutely. No, that was a pivotal case, you know, depending upon, you know, how focused people, your listeners or viewers may have been, you know, Oscar Grant case was later made into a movie called Fruitvale. And that movie, you know, with Michael B. Jordan kind of launched him, as well as Ryan Coogler, who was the director of that movie, you know, launched their careers. And so what we saw is what I saw, I experienced it real time, not as a movie, but in reality. And so I woke up the day, January 1st, 2009, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw a man being executed, you know, unarmed, face down on the sidewalk by a police officer, which was a BART officer on the subway. I couldn't believe it. And then what unfolded was the community rising up and demanding that that officer, whose name is Johannes Meserly, be criminally prosecuted. Because much like we've seen in today's time with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, and the list goes on, you know, the district attorney was not going to prosecute these officers or these offenders of our community for taking somebody's life. And so it took the community to rise up, and I happened to be an attorney, and I was in the office that litigated that case. And so we did the civil part of it. So we sued BART, we sued the officer, but then there was a criminal component that the community demanded that the officer be prosecuted. And many of your viewers may understand that that case later, the criminal case was later transferred to LA because they quote unquote didn't think he could get a fair trial, which in and of itself shows you that there's two justice, two criminal systems, because there's people, as we all know, that very rarely does that happen, where a criminal defendant isn't prosecuted in the very community where he's alleged to have committed the crimes. They transferred that case way down to LA to the other end of the state, in my opinion, to try to give Johannes Meserly the best shot he could at freedom that he didn't deserve. And even when the jury came back with the conviction was for involuntary manslaughter along with a gun enhancement. And anyone here that's listening and knows about the criminal justice system knows that those enhancements carry a lot of time. That would have put about 15 to 20 years on his sentence. He would have therefore been sentenced like many of the other brothers and sisters who have been saddled with these enhancements in the same way. Instead, the judge saw fit to strip that away from his sentence. Whoa. And instead just sentenced him to 2 years of time, which he only did about 8 months in LA County Jail. So he never even saw prison for killing somebody. And, you know, obviously that was crushing to the community, but at the same time, it was bittersweet because that was the first time an officer has been prosecuted for murder in 101 years in California. So that was a landmark case, and that spawned the Trayvon Martin movement. That spawned the I Can't Breathe, the Hands Up, Don't Shoot. That was the early case that led to the activism we see today. What I want people to always remember is it's a continuum. Very rarely is it just something new that pops up. There's usually a bunch of different things that lead to the public becoming aware and more open and more active to what they're seeing take place.
Yeah, it was a travesty. I mean, when I remember reading about the case in real time and actually kind of following as much as I could, I was really shocked when they granted them a change of venue the way that they did. But what did you learn? We all saw the movie Fruitvale Station, which I think was a terrific movie. Really gave an eye-opening awareness to who Oscar Grant, you know, was. But what did you learn about Oscar Grant aside from the movie when you took on the case? Because it seemed like the movie really humanized him in a way where I felt like it did him justice. What did you learn about Oscar Grant?
Yeah, Oscar was a leader amongst his peers. Oscar was a young man who got caught up, like many people do, in the environment and, lack of opportunity, so to speak, but then also was trying to fight and struggle for a better path for not only himself, but for his family and in particular his daughter. And before he could kind of turn the leaf, turn the page on his past, that was taken from him. He was shot and killed in cold blood, and he could never make good on the promise that was within him. And so, in spending the first Mother's Day with his mother without her son, I got a chance to see the pictures and talk and just be with her and learn about her son. So, the movie did a great job of humanizing him. And, to me, it stands as a landmark situation because up till then, you really don't get a chance to know somebody who's dead other than a hashtag, a
Right.
headline, a small news article. The world doesn't understand that it's not just a name. This is somebody who touched people, who people loved and who gave love back, who meant something to his community. And so, that case and working with his family, you wouldn't know that raised in the church. You wouldn't know that he was a leader amongst his peers. You wouldn't know that he was actually trying to be the peacekeeper on the night that he was shot and killed, that he wasn't the aggressor, that he wasn't the one who was trying to agitate the police, that his friends looked to him to get them out of there safely. And instead, he became a martyr. And so, that's the type of thing that you wouldn't know unless you were really in the case or you understood the details. And that's why the family and the community and the whole movement was so thankful that Michael B. Jordan lent his talents and Ryan Coogler did as well, and everyone else who was involved in that project.
Absolutely, man. The thing that concerns me, you mentioned some cases earlier. We talked about cases like, Trayvon Martin, who his killer is still out free. You look at what happened with Michael Brown in St. Louis County. You think about pushing it forward. When you think about what happened with George Floyd and his murder, you think about Breonna Taylor, who those officers still have yet to face any kind of criminal charge. You think about Ahmaud Arbery, who that case is, we don't, really know what's going on with the significance of that case right now, even though we know those white supremacists that hunted him down are currently in jail. How concerned should we be when you talk about a change of venue? Because change of venue has always been a determining factor in cases like this. We saw what happened in 1991 with the Rodney King trial, how they transferred it from central and downtown Los Angeles way out to Simi Valley, which was a pro-police, pretty much predominantly white community. And that changed the outcome of the case itself. So what do we have to look forward to? What should we be paying attention to and really bringing eyes on and ears on, awareness to when it comes to these kinds of cases? Because to me, it seems like the change of venue is their rite of passage to duck out of getting justice.
Absolutely. Look, I know many of your viewers are sports fans, and it's just like this. It's like if you're running a race, whether it's a marathon or a sprint, you have to run it just as serious as when you started, all the way through the tape. Okay? You cannot let up. You cannot look back and look to the side. You must keep your eyes trained and focused on the finish line. And it's the same thing in the legal case, because nothing beats the cross but the double cross. So, you have to understand that there's different procedures, there's different mechanisms that you or I may not get the benefit of, but a police officer who enjoys special privileges may. And so, we have to stay on the district attorney to make sure that they diligently prosecute it just as diligently as they prosecute anyone else, because the conviction rates are like 97, 99% if you're not a police officer. And so it should be the same type of diligence of prosecution, the same level of retribution, the same level of making sure justice is served. And unless the community keeps their eyes focused and the pressure on, you never know where that double cross will come from. So, we just got to always make sure that we run through the tape.
Hey, Adante Porter is dropping jewels right now, dropping gems. Y'all better pay attention and check him out. Now, what I want to ask you is, obviously, we've been following the Rayshard Brooks case, where that young man was savagely murdered by Atlanta cops he was under the influence, obviously, of alcohol. There's no denying that. But the way they went about doing it and how these videos keep coming out about him being cooperative. He was trying to negotiate his way to getting home. He didn't want. He was willing to leave his vehicle. He's willing to leave his keys. You know, and there's videos of the cops asking him, well, how much money do you have? And just questions like that. So for my viewers and my audience, what do we need to do as citizens when we deal with that type of that racist behavior? What rights do we have to try to protect us? And then hopefully we don't become like, you know, the people that we talk about now, like the Rayshard Brooks and others that we mentioned. What rights do we really have?
Well, you know, there was a Supreme Court case that established once upon a time as a law of the land that there was no rights a black person had that a white person had to respect. Okay. And so, you know, that ultimately Ferguson v. Plessy was eventually overturned. But that's in the law books. But, you know, when you're out on the streets and you're dealing with a police officer who could serve as judge, jury, and executioner, those rights, you don't want to be what's called dead right. Okay. Meaning, you know, yeah, you exercise your right, but you're not here to live and support and be with your friends, family, and your community. So, you know, you have a bunch of rights. And Rayshard Brooks actually, you know, did many of the things that I would train, coach, or advise people to do. Remain calm, try to try to de-escalate the situation, you know, comply as best you can while still asserting your rights, you know, maintain some level of dignity, which is what he did, while at the same time providing the information so that the officers understand that, you know, you're just really just trying to get through this situation alive versus trying to antagonize them, trying to fight, trying to start a confrontation. That brother sat there for 40-something minutes and was given all kind of field sobriety tests that were crazy. He was essentially proving up and passing the smell test, if you will,
Right.
of someone that should be released. I mean, just think about this. They were so concerned about him being intoxicated, but they allowed him to move the car and drive it. Okay. So that flies in the face of them saying, oh, he was so intoxicated and in danger behind the wheel. Well, why would you let him drive in the first place if that was the case? And then you took 42 minutes of interviewing somebody. Man, he already told you he was just trying to get home. This is the perfect example to me, you know, a perfect horrendous example to me of a situation that didn't deserve an armed response. This is somebody who was asleep, trying to get some food, was trying to get somewhere, had moved the car out the way. The issue had been resolved. This is somebody who just simply needed a ride or allowed to walk to where he was getting to. Instead, they antagonized, ratcheted it up, and then they resorted to force without telling the brother what he was being arrested for. This is what I mean when, even though it's on the books, is you having rights, when in actuality, when it plays out on the streets, those rights aren't respected. Where was the right to just tell this brother, look, listen, you're being arrested for X, Y, and Z? That was never done. Instead, it went hands-on, and then it went to force. And the brother was frankly defending himself because at that point, he's not even being told that he's being placed under arrest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's something that if you look at, you know, any of the TV shows, they tell the person, hey, turn around, put your hands behind your back, you're being arrested. That's important. Why? Because then you know your rights are compromised and you know you have to comply. Until you're told that, why would a person know and why would you have to think that a person can essentially start brutalizing you and you just have to take it? And so, you know, that's what you saw there. And then when he tried to run away to get away from the brutality that was being exacted on him, he took shots in his back. And, you know, you're not even allowed to do that in wartime. You know, that's against the Geneva Convention. So, but it plays out every day on our streets.
Yeah. You know, and it was funny, man, because, and I don't mean funny to be facetious, but funny, just like ridiculous almost. When I watched that tape again, it seemed as if one of the officers whispered something in his ear because he reacted in a way that was like frantic, like he was panicking. Because I don't know too many brothers that's going to just up and just run away from the cops for no reason. Like there's got to be something, and you can see how close the officer was to his ear. He may have whispered something to him. He may have said something to him that sparked him to say, hey, man, I got to get out of here because I may not make it. And the thing about it is that will never be brought up, I'm sure, because there's no audio evidence, obviously. Right. And he's not here to tell his side of that story, unfortunately. But when I look at these cases, I mean, just like we've witnessed, you know, 5 or 6 people have been lynched. They talk about suicides, or hangings. Let's not nickname the truth. It's lynchings. They have lynched at least 4 black people. I believe one person was Latino descent. And I believe there was a transgender black transgender young woman who was also lynched. So what can we do as citizens to protect ourselves? I guess that's the ultimate question. Or can we protect ourselves?
You can, and frankly, simply put, you just have to be on high alert. I remember after 9/11, it was red alert, this, orange alert, that. Well,
Right.
man, for the black community and for the brown community and for any community that's a target in this type of current political and social environment, we're on the highest of alert. So, the idea of being out somewhere alone, being somewhere in a secluded area alone, pulling over and dealing with cops in a dark area, man, you need to be somewhere where people can see you, where there's witnesses. You need a buddy system. And, frankly, you need to be training and preparing yourself to defend yourself if you find yourself in a situation where you have to fend for your life. Because this is not a fairy tale. This is not make believe. This is not hyperbole. This is the reality that we're living in right now. So, I just encourage everyone, hands up, eyes up, head up, and be aware of your surroundings. And, unfortunately, that's the reality we live in, but that's the truth.
Absolutely. I know you've been fighting the good fight against the system for many, many years. You actually took a case against several different Bay Area police departments with a young lady, Celeste Guap, who was being used as sex trafficking. And this was before obviously the federal and the federal mandate, and obviously the awareness of what sex trafficking really is and the damage that it causes people, not just physically but psychologically. And you took on quite a few Bay Area police departments. How did you come across that case, and how much was your life threatened during the process of going against those officers?
Well, I like to think, and I think it proves out based on the track record, I've always considered myself a lawyer for the people, period. And so she is of my community. And so, people have told her to reach out to me, and I got in contact with her, or she got in contact with me in that way. And, as soon as I heard her story, my heart broke, because this was a person, as many people who find themselves in these positions, someone who had her own tragedies and difficulties before winding up in the clutches of people who meant her no good and only wanted to exploit her position within our society. And so, unfortunately, it happened to be the people who were supposed to be able to trust, police officers. And so, the story broke because a police officer's quote unquote committed suicide. And that brought the attention to why he committed suicide. And in the investigation, they found out that he had left, a letter essentially to everyone saying that, hey, I wasn't involved with this young lady, but other people were. Now, when that began to heat up and all the intrigue behind an officer committing suicide and leaving a note saying that he wasn't involved, but other people were with this young lady, well, it brought the attention and the scrutiny of the world. And it was like a rotten onion. Every layer, it just got more and more pungent and stanky because we started realizing that it wasn't just this particular police officer, but there were others, and not just one particular police department, but multiple police departments. And, they all it was like, dogs setting in on a prey, animals, wild animals out on a hunt. And so they all took a piece of this young lady in their own particular way. And, like, once again, being a lawyer for the people, I wasn't going to sit on the sidelines and watch that take place. So I was happy to represent her. She's well on her way to recovery. And, it's just a situation where, we have to protect our own. You got to protect your people.
Absolutely. So what was the atmosphere like for you? I'm sure you didn't get a lot of greeting cards from the police officers that were doing it. So how did you have to protect yourself or move different, especially going after so many different departments at one particular point?
Well, in my line of work, I've been doing this for 15, going on 16 years in terms of representing the community and particularly focusing on police brutality cases. I've received death threats. I've received all kind of, racial epithets and everything else. But, when I just think about our ancestors, when I think about all the people, our allies who will sacrifice their safety and their lives, we just keep pressing on. So, in some ways, it comes with the territory. It's like for those people who are involved in athletics, you're going to have to participate. You know, you have to train. You have to go to training camp. You know, you have to do 2-a-days. You know, there's going to be fans in the stand that'll be rooting for you. There's going to be some fans in the stands who are going to be booing for you. But what are you going to do? Not make the layup, not make the free throw, not take the shot because somebody doesn't want you to win? No, the will to win has to overcome all, and the will for justice will. So, you know, I just kind of take that with me everywhere I go and just know that I'm on the right side of history. And in the end of the day, I have to believe that, you know, the truth will come out, that we were taking the right stance, and everyone who dared to be on the wrong side of history, well, they're going to be the losers in this fight.
Oh, wholeheartedly. And that's just how it goes. In today's climate and what we've been going through the last decade or two, how important, in your estimation, is Black media?
You know, it's super important because without media that understands, appreciates, and covers the stories that affect us in the angles that express our concerns or why it's significant, then you're allowing someone else to create your narrative. You're allowing someone else may not have your best interest in heart to tell your story. So Black media is important. This goes all the way back to Ida B. Wells for people who may or may not be familiar. But Ida B. Wells was a great journalist back in the days of Reconstruction. And what she managed to do was through newspapers, connect the Black communities around the country to let somebody know in Texas that what was happening there in terms of lynchings was happening in Mississippi, and that what was happening in Mississippi in terms of lynchings was happening in Tennessee, and so on and so forth. And that's what we have happening here with your platform and others like it, just giving us an opportunity to talk about whatever the issue may be. We start realizing that the miles between us don't matter. People are in our community facing the same issues, and it's not by accident. It's not by accident.
Not at all.
So, you know, it's the same forces at play in all these different communities. And I personally feel that through the platforms such as yours, you know, we start understanding and realizing that then we can actually mobilize, galvanize, and organize so that we can actually put a united front on behalf of the community. So, you know, man, Black media is important, man. Much respect. Many props to you, brother.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. I wholeheartedly. I mean, there are many of us out here that are fighting that fight, man, and making sure that we get our voices heard and not get erased, whether it's because of COVID or any other type of pandemic. We make sure that we try to be on the front lines and give a voice to the people that we need to give a voice to. And you talk about telling stories. Obviously, you've been a part of some major stories that we talked about earlier on this show. But your story in particular, to me, is one of the most important because you, by fighting against the establishment, fighting for justice for others, you yourself was in a situation where you now have to fight for justice for you. And we're talking about the film that you created and composed called Dead Right. And I'm telling everybody, man, this is when I got the trailer and we featured it on here and I got the trailer, man, I'm telling you, I had to watch it twice. The first time I could not watch it all the way through because it brought back some memories of some incidents that I had to deal with my son and my family, dealing with police officers that came into my home 15, 20 deep, trying to, you know, criminalize my 6-year-old son, by the way. And so I had to kind of take a pause, come back, and then I started watching it from the beginning, and I watched the entire trailer, man. I first of all, hats off to you for being able to tell that story. Secondly, man, I think it's a story that everybody, whether you're Black, white, Latino, Asian, gay, lesbian, handicapped, transgender, whatever you are, human being, you need to really watch this story because it's very, very impactful and it speaks to a lot of different things that is going on in today's world and has been going on for the last 400 years. Talk a little bit about that story, but then having the courage enough to be able to tell that story because you went through such a traumatic situation.
Well, you know, as they say, you know, does art imitate life or does life imitate art? And so, you know, in this trailer, in this movie, it's based upon my personal story. And it's a situation, you know, as I was talking about before, it's almost a rite of passage. If you start driving as a Black or brown person, you know, the chances of being pulled over, the chances of being searched, the chances of you having a gun pulled on you is incredibly high. And most people wouldn't think that would happen to somebody like me, a civil rights attorney who's pretty prominent, well known, and established in my career, especially at that age. It was just 3 years ago. So I was about to turn, or was about 40 years old. And man, to go through that at that stage was humiliating. To just be driving, minding my business, had not committed any crimes, no traffic infractions, driving slow in the car that I earned, a nice car, nice Mercedes Benz, top of the line. And I'm literally just thinking about what I was going to go to the grocery store in order to get food for my family. And this was the day after Christmas. So contrary to what some people might want to believe or think, like I hadn't done anything to bring this on myself. And that's what we often think when people are like, oh, the police did something. Well, what did you do? And it's like, I wasn't doing anything but minding my business. But what wound up happening was the police sat in on me and I fit the description, which I'm sure many people can identify with that. I fit the description of somebody who supposedly had first brandished an AK-47 out of their car. And then after I was put at gunpoint, threatened within an inch of my life, giving conflicting orders, don't move, but then being told to get out the car right now. And if I didn't, I'd be shot. I had to negotiate my way out of that position and ultimately, made to crawl on the ground and just humiliated, or at least they tried to. I was certainly embarrassed, and then handcuffed, thrown in the back of the car and had my car searched. And at the end of the day, when they released me with no charges, no tickets, no nothing, they just told me, well, somebody actually shot an AK-47 out of a silver car. And I said, a silver car? Wait, hold on. Do you mean to tell me any silver car, any driver is subject to having 4, 5, 6 different guns pointed on them, cursed at, yelled at, made to crawl on the ground? I bet you didn't go for your viewers out in LA. I know you didn't go up in the Beverly Hills doing this. I know in the Bay Area, you didn't go into Piedmont, and it wasn't that I was in a bad part of town either. I wasn't even in the city of Oakland, and this was Oakland police. So, it was one of those things where it happened, but then I wasn't going to let it in there. And so what I wound up doing was, I filed a citizen's complaint, got those officers, put that in their file. The citizen's complaint came out saying that I was right, that they were wrong for what they did. And then I filed a lawsuit. So, and then I put this movie together called Dead Right, because I want to use Dead Right in the movie itself, the short film, as a way to A, increase awareness about this, B, to kind of erase some of the stigma around it happening to you, because many people suffer in silence. There's so many indignities, microaggression, macroaggressions that we go through day to day for nothing more than just the color of our skin or where we live. And we just kind of, you learn to just take it and keep going, put on a face, fix your face, and go on with your business. But I wanted to take it out of the shadows and talk about it. And just as importantly, use it as a teaching point to showing people how I survived and that it could even happen to me, a well-known civil rights attorney who was doing nothing. So, to erase the idea that it only happens to those people or you must have been doing something to deserve it. I didn't do anything to deserve it. But if they didn't know my name before I filed that complaint in the lawsuit, they know it now.
Absolutely. So are there any plans to release this film? Any trailers, any dates that are going to come where everybody can watch this film?
Absolutely. I want everybody to catch it. We're going to be putting the trailer out just a few days, and the movie will shortly follow behind that. For me, I think of it as, in terms of that incident, it's a pivotal point, because kind of like Biggie said in his rhyme, I'm not only the client, I'm the player president. Well, I'm not only the attorney, I'm also someone who has been the plaintiff, who has been the aggrieved citizen. So, same thing. So, yeah, it's coming out. I encourage everybody to take a look at it. It's Dead Right. Man, it's going to grip, hold you, and keep your attention. And most importantly, I hope that it gives people that understanding that you can control your narrative and you can control what happens to you. You just have to wait until the tables turn and you're in a position of power. When you're on the street, the officer has an ability to be the judge, the jury, and executioner. But when you come to the courtroom and you come to the legal system, those tables can turn if you have the right attorney and you have the right resources.
Let me ask you this question. With all that's been going on with police shootings, things of that nature, we've seen, cops here in Southern California, mainly the sheriff's department, shooting people in the back. There was a videotape that I was sent to where they show sheriff's deputies hanging out the side of a window as if they were doing drive-by spraying kids with either rubber bullets or casings or what have you. With legislation, the way that people are trying to change these days, I'm sure you've been a part of it at some point in time. Do you see legislation actually changing to a point where some of these officers will not only be getting criminal charges, but they can start taking away from their pensions? And my second part of my question is, do you think if they start taking away these pensions, that some of these killings will start to somewhat subside, not totally get rid of, but somewhat subside?
Well, I think the principle that you're hitting on is very important. It's, what can we do as a society to make this stop, or at least diminish? Then the second piece is, how is that going to affect the future going forward? And the idea is, legislation can help, because right now, the officers essentially don't feel any personal accountability. Mm-hmm. That's being in an abusive relationship with someone, and they continue to beat and abuse you and do all kind of things to demean you. And the police come out, take the report, and then they leave. You to still live there and be there with your abuser, and you can never get away from your tormentor. That's essentially what you're seeing in an analogous to what's going on in our society. And at some point in time, we have to put a stop. And like we have domestic violence laws that essentially say, look, if you abuse somebody, we're going to take it serious. We're not just taking the report and going away. That's what we need to have here. And so one of the fundamental principles, as growing up, is that you have to take personal responsibility. Right now, there's no criminal responsibility because very few officers get brought up on charges. District attorneys give them a pass. The police chiefs give them a pass. No discipline. And then on top of that, if you come and retain somebody like me and I file a lawsuit on your behalf to get to the truth on your journey to justice, when we get to the end of that journey to justice, and whether it's by settlement, whether it's by jury trial, no matter how big that number might be, nothing's coming out the officer's pocket. So what is their incentive to stop? The very principle that we have with our society about a societal contract, if you break the contract, there's penalties. If you park at a parking meter and you don't pay, you have to pay by ticket. If you drive and you're unlicensed and you break the social contract about driving unlicensed or not having insurance, you're going to pay more. Those same principles need to apply to police officers. It's amazing to me that we can have a system set up in place as we have it now, where you can cost your employer, the employer being the taxpayer in society, you can kill, you can maim, you can essentially cause your employer to have to pay millions of dollars out. And as opposed to getting fired or disciplined or brought up on charges, you're promoted. That makes no damn sense, period.
None at all. So I'm really hoping that we can all somehow change the legislation, at least to turn it in our favor, because I agree with you. These cops are not going to stop. They have no accountability. They have no responsibility. And I think when you start hitting them in the wallet, like I've always said, economics is key. If you want change, you start affecting that bottom line. People start thinking differently. As we've seen Starbucks change their perspective on many accounts. There's several other companies that have decided, when the people rise up and say, okay, well, we're not going to support you anymore. We're going to hit you in your pocket. And that's the only true change that I can see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree, man. It's like, any of your viewers play basketball, man. If nobody's calling fouls, how aggressive and physical does the game become all of a sudden, right?
Exactly.
If you could just be a bull in the china shop and there's never any fouls called, man, it turns into a whole different game, right? And that's what happened. Nobody's calling the fouls.
Hello.
And if you get too many fouls, you're supposed to be out the game. Right now, brother running up 15 fouls, all kind of packs, and never getting put on the bench.
Right. Like that's 100% accurate. And when I think of Oakland, I think of obviously, Hammer, and I think of the Bay Area too. Like I think of Hammer, I think of E40, Too Short, Spice One, the Loonies, countless other artists that I think about. But there's one entity in particular that I think about that's no longer there, and that's the Oakland Raiders, who have now become the Las Vegas Raiders. So I want to get your take on, are you still a Raider fan? Because I know I talked to some people up there in the Bay, and they're no longer Raider fans. Some are still hurt, obviously, and I understand. But the tradition that team and that culture that team has been a part of that area for many decades. Are you still a Raider fan? And will you be going to Vegas to watch the team play?
Man, it's been an abusive relationship, man. I probably need to go to counseling, man. I've been a Raider fan even when, LA borrowed them for a minute and sent them back. And, they broke up with us again, and now they moved to Vegas, man. But, I'm sure people out there listening, you've been in relationships and, the other party is continue to do things and you keep taking them back, man. So, based on nostalgia and everything else. So, yes, I'm still a Raiders fan, but I also understand sports are a business. And so even though our culture kind of exalts them and puts sports on a pedestal, you have to understand that at the end of the day, it's a money-making venture. Okay? So, the owner of the Raiders, as much as it meant to the culture, the team itself, the franchise itself, hiring the first black coach, hiring and promoting the first Latino coach and the first woman to be a general manager. And so it has those type of progressive ideals attached to it, the color scheme, what it stands for, the Raiders, look, you can't erase any of that. But what I'm never forgot to keep my eye on is that it's a business. And so, we saw the NFL, get rid of Kaepernick because they thought it was going to turn their fan base away. And it was a business decision. Now that people have come out in support of civil rights and police reform, they embrace them because it's a business decision. So, let's not get it confused. I could root for a team, but at the end of the day, I know it's a business. And he found a better business opportunity out in Vegas. So, yes, I'll be in Vegas supporting the team. I'll be there. I hope to run into some of your fans and, they could come up and maybe, we could share a beer or something. But at the end of the day, it's you can't get it confused, man. Sports are entertainment.
Now, does this hurt a little more because you guys are also home to the Warriors? Oracle Arena was a special place. They won championships there. I've heard the stories about Oracle being just that intimate venue where the fans come and they really just cheer on the team. And you hear Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond talk about how important the fans were when it came to, games and playoff games and stuff like that. Now they moved to San Francisco to the Chase Center. Are you still supporting the Warriors too?
Yeah, man, they're still in the Bay, so they're doing better than the Raiders, okay? They didn't flee to a whole nother state. But, as a lifelong Warriors fan that went through all the losing seasons and having the Lakers come up here and do us in and stun on us, and, it felt good to get some victories under our belt, no doubt, and to do it at the Oracle Arena, which if you're from the Bay, and particularly if you're from Oakland, we refer to them as the East Oakland Warriors, okay? Not the Golden State Warriors, the East Oakland Warriors, or the Beast Oakland Warriors. So, I'm still a fan. I understand what they did. Once again, a business decision. But, in some ways, they ripped the heart and soul out of the team. I hope they fare well in their new home. But, it's not going to be the same because the Oracle Arena has so much nostalgia. It's right in the middle of the community. And similar to our community, it has a very story that we can embrace. Being the underdog, but fighting to become the top dog. So that story and that storyline is important to us. We continue to embrace it, and just as important, the players have embraced the community and they support the community, not just by wearing the jersey, but by coming out when they don't have to support community organizations, to support community movements. Steph Curry and other Warriors came out to march with the people about police reform. They put their money where their mouth is. They donate. They come out. They support. They're visible. Okay? That's an example that goes beyond the championship ring that each and every other professional athlete would be great to emulate, man. Don't just shut up and dribble, brother. You got to get out here and donate whatever you got to the cause, because the cause concerns more than just you. Everyone in your family doesn't have the ability to run that fast, to dunk that ball. And so, but you need to be looking out for the least of us as you get yours too. You feel me? You gotta push ahead, but you gotta reach back and pull up all at the same time.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I have a tremendous amount of respect for people like Marshawn Lynch and Damian Lillard, who never forgot about the community of Oakland and the people in Oakland as well.
Absolutely. That's town business right there. Those are native sons, man, and they both represented so well. Shout out to the brothers, man. I love watching them do what they do on and off the field.
Absolutely, man. Well, you know what? I enjoy what you do. I have a tremendous amount of respect for what you've done and what you're continuing to do out here fighting for us as the people and making sure that you're knocking down some of these strongholds in the legal system that need to be knocked down. So thank you so much once again, Adante Pointer. He has a short film called Dead Right. Make sure you guys go support it, check it out, watch it, spread it, the news around to your family and friends, because this is an impactful film that we all need to watch, no matter what color you are, because it impacts us all. So let everybody know where they can continue to follow you and all of your great work on social media.
For sure, man. I want to throw you a special shout out too, tip my hat, so to speak, for having a platform where people could come here, get information, get entertainment, but also just, the fellowship, if you will, a place and a space that people feel like they could be comfy to relax and really express themselves and to educate and, give everybody a shout out. So, right on, good brother, for doing that. We salute you for that. As relates to my film and how to stay up on all the fights that I'm taking, so you can get more of the point of view, you can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram handle, Adante Pointer, ESQ. And same thing on Facebook, Adante Pointer. I'll be having the trailer on there, giving you ideas of where you can find more information about these cases that are pivotal, and because these cases, once again, it's just not a hashtag, a t-shirt. This is real life. And so, come with me on this journey to justice and stand with the lawyers for the people. LawyersFTP.com.
Absolutely, man. That's what we're here for, man. We got to give a voice. We got to make sure we doing our parts and in several ways, man. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me here on the NH Experience. I greatly appreciate you, man. And don't be a stranger. Anytime you need anything, I mean that sincerely, man. Please let me know.
Man, I'm pulling up, man. I'm coming down to LA, man.
What's up? Let me know, man. You in the city. You know what to do.
Absolutely, man. I would have come see what it do, man, with somebody who really knows what it do on the ground.
Hey, man, let's go get it, man. I got some folks with me, man. So I got a great team of people with me, man. So we definitely gonna get it in.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. The one and only Adante Pointer, ESQ. Make sure you go check him out and follow him, man. We'll talk to you soon, good brother.
Peace.